Welcome to Creative Leadership. I'm your host, Jeremy Sirota. Andy Warhol once said, being good in business is the most fascinating kind of art. My guest today embodies that philosophy. David Barbe has played in multiple bands, including as the bassist in Sugar with Bob Mould, has a solo career, is the producer behind every album from the Drive-By Truckers, runs a recording studio, and is director of the University of Georgia's music business program. Where most people see contradictions, David sees opportunities. His philosophy is simple. The answer should never be no in any creative endeavor. Today, we're going to explore what we can learn from a self-styled lo-fi polymath. David, welcome to Creative Leadership.
Thank you.
I'm really excited about this conversation since we met because there's just a lot of similarities of how we think and approach life. I was looking at one of your speeches, and you noticed something that kind of caught my eye, which is people focus too much on what they want to be and too little on the process of becoming. I love that. It very much resonates with how I think about life. But I'm really curious about how that philosophy is different for when you work with artists versus maybe how you teach your students, or is it the same? And there's really not a difference in that approach.
For me, it's all kind of one game. If people that I work with in the studio, artists, other engineers and producers, if they came into my classroom or my students came to the studio or they watched me coach a Little League baseball practice, they would realize that I'm a restaurant with very few ingredients. It's just how you mix the ingredients together. The philosophy of doing rather than worrying about being is part of everything I do in my life. Certainly with me, and I think with a lot of people, it's easy to where there's some philosophy we have, some things that we do in our life that we're not aware of.
Yeah.
Until later on, you look back over the course of your life. Realized when I started teaching here and started having interns at the studio that there were people that came in with these statements of what they wanted to be, but it seemed to me that if they spent more time just like, how much do you actually work on recording? It's not like, I want to be a famous record producer. It's like, how obsessed are you with getting home every day and working on music? Because if you're not, you should really find something that you are obsessed with doing all the time. And I started noticing this in a lot of things in life and looked back over my own life and realized that when I graduated college and I was going to work at a local taco place here called the Taco Stand, and my mom asked me, why are you going to take a job? Like, you have a college degree. But as I told her, it's like, I really just need like support jobs that I don't actually have to think about very much so that I can really focus my energies on what I love to do, which is making music. And I truly believed that if I just worked at it all the time, that it would either work out or it becomes my career, which is fortunately what happened, but I would not have any doubts about the amount of effort and energy that I put into it. Because I feel like it's easy people can have regrets and second guesses about things they don't do, things they should have done. That, oh, I wish I'd done this. I wish I'd done that. I should have said this. If only I'd tried this, I could have been a contender or whatever. As opposed to people who say, yeah, I played minor league baseball for 9 years. It just was not going to happen for me. People who actually do something that they care about for a while, when it doesn't work, they can move on more easily, I think, than people who don't. And sometimes it actually works out for you.
Do you think passion has to be connected to obsession? Do you think there's a correlation between those two? Because I'll give you the example for myself, which is I'm really driven by my curiosity, and my curiosity becomes my obsession, like to the point where I'm so guilty of rabbit holing all the time. I have to consciously be aware of it and pull myself out. I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
I don't know that I can imagine being obsessed with something I'm not passionate about. Like the things that I love to do in my life, especially working in the studio, I was obsessed with getting better at it because I'm passionate about making music. desperately wanted to be good at it. I realized the more I do this, the better I get at it. The better I get at it, the more I can do because I'll be able to do my other things less, which when I was getting started out ranged from two different burrito rolling stages of my career. A lot of asphalt repair. I could speak at some length about asphalt emulsion. As I say this, I can still smell that stuff from 40 years ago. But I was obsessed with getting better because I was passionate about the art of creating music.
I can't smell the asphalt, but I can still smell the acetone because I used to work at a photo shop in high school. You reminded me of one of my favorite expressions, which is when everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And there is this correlation between obsession and your passion and things that take time. Like some people can have very quick success, others can take a very long time to build, whether it's on the creative side, it's on the business side. I did not become a CEO founder when I was 22. It was 42 when I took over, and it took a long time to build my way towards that. You clearly have had a lot of success across actually a lot of different kind of verticals and fields. And I'm just curious about how do you channel both obsession and passion you have for the creative side and then all these other things you do, because they are related to each other, but each one's like a slightly different discipline and requires a slightly different kind of thought matrix.
When the biggest breakthrough for me with that was when I was approached about coming to UGA to teach and be the director of the music business program. My music career was tangled up enough with a lot of things that I was busy engineering and producing my own projects. I'm still, as always, busy writing and performing and recording my own music, as well as those of other people, and running the business of my recording studio. Right before I was approached about UGA, I had just completed a project where my daughter was in college at the time, and we bought this old house and remodeled it for her to have roommates and tenants over there. I just had a lot going on. And when I was approached, George Fontaine, who's the owner of New West Records, is a great guy and a real mentor for me. And he was the person that approached me for UGA. When the previous director was leaving, they talked to George because he'd been a big supporter of the program. They were concerned about, since the program was relatively new at the time, about can it survive if the original director leaves? And I was George's idea. And when he approached me, I thought his idea was frankly insane. That I said, I can't do that. And he just said, you know about making records, you know about running your business of your studio, you know about working with artists, you've managed bands, well, you've booked tours. Your parents are both in the music business, you grew up in it, right? Well, I mean, of course, there's that too. And all these things. And I said, well, I don't know how to teach anybody anything. That's not true. You have interns at your studio. You coach Little League Baseball for a long time. I've watched you in action with people. You can do this. And George said, you don't have to give up anything, that you're just going to expand your reach. This is only going to make everything you do better. And everything that you do on the outside will be beneficial to this, which to somebody like me, based on what I've been involved in the last 15 years, is an incredibly seductive pitch. And so I agreed to try it. And the first few months that I was at the university was a lot because I just finished Deer Hunter Halcyon Digest. I was in the middle of Drive By Truckers, Go Boots. I had a couple other recording projects. Not only had I never taught anything before, I'd never had a job before other than like crack filling and go work making tacos and making rock and roll records. Really, for my whole adult life, my career was going on tour making records. I would show up at the university at 8 o'clock in the morning. I was doing sessions in the evening and sessions on the weekend, probably working like 90 plus hours every week for about 3 or 4 months. Somewhere along the line, I figured out how to manage it, which was not thinking about all of it, but learning how to compartmentalize and thinking about this and then this and being completely focused on what I'm doing it when I'm doing it. I also have these type of things with me every day, which is a list of things that I scratch. It's like the dopamine of scratching one off the list, and I'll put little insignificant things on there, around this same time, I ran into my friend Matt Hickey, who's a booking agent with High Road. I know him through Drive By Truckers, but he also books Wilco and about 40 or 50 other bands. I had said something to him about, I'll text you to meet up. And he said, I never do that. He said, when I'm in something like this, a festival, I'm exactly where I need to be right now. Otherwise, you spend all your time looking at your phone, figuring out what you're supposed to do. The philosophy, I'm exactly where I need to be right now, has stuck with me. I think about that when I'm working on school. I'm exactly where I need to be right now. When I'm talking to you, I'm exactly where I need to be right now. And so today already, it's midday. I have come to the university early, done some administrative and class planning work here, went and took care of something at the rental property that I still have 15 years later, went to the studio, took care of some business over there, came back to the university, took care of some more stuff, and here we are. But being able to do that and realizing that when I'm not multitasking, I'm not only not shortchanging the other things, I'm doing a better job at everything.
There's so many things you just said there that I've always heard it say, doing more. I love that way of framing it, expand your reach, because at first it's going to be overwhelming. More than you're capable of until you find a new equilibrium, or you discover that something else you're doing isn't what you want to do anymore. And you reset how you approach your life. And I think the one thing that people, and I'm curious if you have any advice here, one of the things you just talked about is being, and I think some of the most talented creatives are this, very process oriented, in fact. I actually think process is the flip side of creativity. Just think about any songwriter and what they have to do to achieve that. And they may not think of it that way, but if you look at what they're doing, there's a complete both chaoticness to it, but also process to it. The area where people struggle is they can get focused, but where they struggle is what you just laid out around your day requires a very high switch mentality. You're code switching between doing this, now doing this, now doing that. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I wonder, is that just how your brain is wired? Because my brain's wired that way. I've switched from 4 different things this morning, and I'm here now and really excited to hear what you have to say. But I don't know if everyone can achieve that.
I'm not sure if I was just wired that way. I am wired in a way where I will work on something to get better at it. We all kind of grow into who we are, actually. And the person that we think we are when we're 20 is a person who's trying to pretend there's something else. That is the Minutemen song. Mike Watt is referencing all his musical heroes. When he's a teenager, he wished he was E. Bloom and Blue Oyster Cult, and then he wished he was Joe Strummer when he learned about punk rock, and then they're in LA and he wished he was John Doe, and later on realizes he's just Mike Watt, which is equal of any of those other guys and worthy of that. And so I think we grow into who we are, but the switch mentality is either something that I'm wired to do that I became aware of that I was doing, or something that I developed because I had to.
You've said that there are 3 core skills for success in your field: technical musical skills, business development, and the soft skill of working with people.
Yeah.
So the ability to read the room, then knowing when to push, when to pull, when to step back. And I'm just kind of curious, like, why those 3? Is that part of your curriculum? Do you teach this to your students? Is this part of how you work with artists?
I do, because there are usually less ingredients in things than we can think there are at first.
Do you mean like it looks more complex from the outside than when you get onto the inside?
When you really think about things, you can boil it down. Like, another thing that I've been involved in all kinds of ways in my life is negotiating about things. It's like, at one point I had 3 teenage children, which meant I was buying and selling used cars all the time. Or negotiating a producer deal, or helping an artist negotiate a record deal, or buying a house, or whatever. And
I thought you were going to say negotiating with your children, not the negotiating cars for them to drive. That's my biggest negotiation.
My children and I have a wonderful relationship. They're in their 30s now. We always have. But I tried to make it clear that at the end of the day, there is only one vote that counts, and that I love you. I want the very best for you, but I also own the house and buy all the food here. There's even times with my teenagers where I said, if you're concerned there's a double standard here, there absolutely is. Because just because I did some dumb thing back in the 70s doesn't mean that I haven't matured enough to realize it was a dumb thing and that I shouldn't have done that. As to your actual point of the three central skills that I mentioned when you work in a studio, which is musical, technical, business, good hang, is soft skills to with people. I think that well, I mentioned negotiating. The reason I did is that when you're going to negotiate something with somebody, sometimes it's helpful to me to make a list of every single possible issue. If you were negotiating a record deal, for example, you could say, okay, let's deal with the easy stuff first, like
Mhm.
release date. We want September. How do you feel about that? Well, we were kind of thinking mid-August would give us a little bit more of a jump. Like, we're okay with that. We can be ready. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
That's an easy one. We've got that. Or how we're going to promote something in a certain territory. And they feel more strongly about it than I do. It's like, I can give on that. But what I do feel strongly about is this other thing. Okay, fine, we can have that. And we can get down to in a record deal, it's really going to all be about master ownership, publishing rights, how much money we're going to get paid. And so in the studios, I have thought of narrowed things down to basic ingredients of why are people successful? Who is successful? Who is not successful? What do the successful people have in common? What do people that you think would be great at this, where it just doesn't ever seem to get any traction in their career? How
Mhm.
does this work? And I thought of a few people that I got started with at about the same time as an engineer in studios, and everybody has a different career path. And I could think of some people that are just like, man, he's the best engineer of any of us, yet his career never takes off. I did a few sessions and realized little antiseptic personality in the studio. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of the artists just don't vibe out with that. To create great art, you have to be emotionally vulnerable. You have to be able to open up and release and let it out, which also means being able to let things in. There are other people I've thought of that are like, oh, yeah, great guy, super musical, but has no concept of developing new business, being on time. Your whole contact with the world shouldn't be like writing your number down on a scrap of paper and handing it to somebody in a club. There's got to be a better way to communicate. The first day of class every year, I tell my students, I can talk to you about the music business and everything we can think up with that for a year. At the end of the day, it's show up early, stay late, work harder, be authentic, be grateful for slackers because they'll make you look a little bit better if you work hard and show up on time. And always tell the truth and focus on top quality all the time. When you're tired, when you're close to the finish line, just focus on quality in everything that you do. You'll get a better result. People will notice that about you. And again, simple ingredients. Just don't make life harder than it already is.
I love how simple you break it down. That's not just applicable to students. You could apply that to anyone in any stage of their life because sometimes as we get older, we overcomplicate, we over-engineer
Yeah.
too much. One of the things that I love about process is the more you're prepared, the more process you put in place, the more it actually allows you to be creative because you've laid all this groundwork. It's almost like this webbing that allows everything else to flow from it. You have this foundation built around it, is number one. And then the second, and this really goes to something that I heard when I interviewed Brett Gurewitz, infectiously positive attitude in the studio. He's produced hundreds of albums. He projects this optimism, this energy, a huge part of helping people in those challenging moments because life is challenging. Living is solving those challenges. Do you think that's been a big part of what's helped you succeed?
Absolutely, yes. I can think of so many instances in my life where it's just having that positive, not a Pollyanna, but a positive attitude. I know what you're talking about, and I deeply believe it's true.
Mm.
It is, I found myself saying a few times to people, this is going to work out because sooner or later, just about everything always does. There are serious situations in this world and humanity that I'm not making light of at all. I'm talking about in our day to day
Yeah.
work, finishing the studio, finishing something in the studio, working on a song, teaching a class, whatever we're doing, that I find negativity to be defeatist. I've never been a sore loser, but I love to win and I love to be good at things. And I love it when something's a little bit better. And I was recording a really cool band over the weekend, Star Power. They're from here. The singer, Elizabeth, is great. And we listened and it was really, really good. And there's a couple things that I told her, it's like, okay, so good. But if we really wanted to be great, there's a couple of words where, and we'd never worked together before. We know each other, but we'd never worked together. She was like, okay, I love this. How do I do it? And I said, okay. And I told her about how the shape of your mouth affects the pitch. Like if you're saying an E word, when you do this, if you spread too wide, everything kind of drops a little bit. And it's like, yeah, you can go flat a little bit. Just round that mouth out a little bit. We just soften the E a little bit. And she did it and it just blew her mind. Now I know this from, I don't know how many hours I've worked in studios or been in studios. My mom went to labor with me in a demo session. So 50,000 hours of, I don't know, a lot of
Yeah.
lives and lives of studios. And it's just like, I'm also a huge sports fan. It's like the amazing story of Michael Jordan, like subtly reaching out and tapping a defender on the side to get him to flinch about that much because he realized, like, I get that much more room. I'm going to sink the shot. I think that the positivity is part of the overall, the big picture, the long game of getting towards somewhere. That if other people are going to understandably have their emotional ups and downs, and if there's somebody there who helps them guide them through their own creativity and their own artistic brilliance, all I'm doing is just telling them, you're going to get this. And sometimes we just sing things 10 times and it doesn't feel right. I think it might be better just to give it a rest and let's hit it tomorrow. And don't beat yourself up about this. The advantage of doing this as much as I have is I can truthfully tell people I've seen so many people that you've heard of struggle with this exact same thing. Let it go, get the next one. When I was coaching Little League, that was rule zero. I had 5 rules for kids, 10 rules for parents, and rule zero for everyone. The least important play is the last one. The most important play is the next one.
My daughter does fencing as a sport, and there's this Olympian who went to her club and worked with her coaches, and he has an expression which is the score is always 0-0. Whatever happens, you got to treat it like it's 0.0 again. You're just starting from scratch every single point.
I'm constantly aware of that every pitch is a new game.
Yeah.
It's just reset, because it's fun to do it.
Yeah. I have a couple friends and my mom as well who are my happiness coach, which is when I get to a low place or I'm doubting myself or going through a challenging moment, that they can't solve it for me, but they can remind me what it looks like on the other side of it. And that's really because when you're in it, when you're in the muck, you're in that quicksand, you know it's there, but you can't feel it. And for someone to remind you that it's there and you're going to get there has actually been really helpful for me in my career. When I started in this role here at Merlin, 45 days in, the pandemic hit. First time CEO, taking over from a founder CEO. It was tough for the whole world. It really challenged me emotionally, not a leadership role. Like I knew what it meant to be a leader, but at an emotional level, it was really tough. And it was helpful to have others who were going through similar experiences or could help me reset and remind me about how to get to that energy again and be optimistic about the future, even when things were really, really bad.
I feel you on that. I had one of the biggest challenges for me. We do all have our ups and downs. I'm a positive person. Like anybody else, I have my ups and downs. And one of the most difficult things for me is that in the areas I work at my studio, producing a record, being the director of this program at UGA, being the dad of my kids who are adults now, I'm kind of at the top of the food chain. When we're younger, there's always somebody older or more experienced than us that we can turn to in our lives. My parents are both deceased, have been for a number of years. I realized that I hit a point in my life. You have reached this stage of your life where you kind of have to not only be that for others, but you have to learn how to be that for yourself. When I'm in one of these things that is incredibly stressful, personal, professional, whatever, we all go through them. And even something as simple as feeling like we have said or done the wrong thing. What I've learned to do is to think back on some of the most stressful and difficult times of my life and very serious situations and realized I got through that. It doesn't put me back there. It's a thing that happened that I got through. And if I got through that, it's not that I just can get through this, it's that I will get through this. And that mindset has been very freeing for me in a lot of areas because it allows you to think clearly about a solution rather than dwelling on a problem.
I'm a very reflective person, even when it's uncomfortable to think
Yeah.
about. We all regret the things we say, the decisions we made. Welcome to being human. You need to own up to your mistakes, apologize for things you do wrong. And then you also need to learn not to be too hard on yourself. We're usually our own worst critics. I don't care how old you get, that's just hard. It's always going to be hard. But I love the idea of reflecting on the challenge you work through, unrelated to the challenge you're doing now, to remind you that you've been able to get through it in the past and you're going to be able to do it again. I'm going to take that one to heart. You've talked about hosting these sessions where teams generate their worst ideas for a product or service. And I love that. That's actually one of my favorite creative modalities. Number one, instead of trying to outcompete each other for a great idea, now they're trying to outcompete each other for a bad idea, which has a lot more psychological safety. You've been in those meetings where first person goes and they have the best idea ever. You're like, oh, I can't compete with that. That's like incredible. It's like a different form of negativity. Whereas bad ideas, like you're suddenly just having fun. You have just ideas that flow for them. Is this something you've been doing for a long time?
I developed that. Like I have all kinds of things that have been developed out of boredom. Either you're on tour and it is a long and not very exciting drive for some of these tour routes that you're on, or you're sitting around for a while. And there's usually other smart, creative people working in these areas. And so there's all kinds of things that we would think of just to kind of kill time. Like I know one day we had a day-long conversational research project about trying to get to the origin of the white suburban bluesman. Like, who do we blame for this? And we worked through all these records and who they may have been influenced by. There's no need to trash talk anybody here, so I will not name the musician that we found we held personally responsible for this. There was another one, music related, where somebody said, hey, who's the least famous person in the most famous band? Like if you start at the Beatles, it's like, well, everybody can name all four of them. We worked down and worked down and worked down and worked down. And where I finally got stumped on that one was, I will never in my life forget now that the bass player of AC/DC is Cliff Williams, because it was like Phil Rudd and Bon Scott and then the brothers. But just like things like that, you know, like what's the history of shoes? Just like finding things to talk about. And I was on a tour where I was with these guys in this band, New Madrid, whose records I produced. We would just joking around, would have these hilarious bad ideas. We talked about the fact that we should just find a way to monetize all of our bad ideas. And then I got the idea of what if we monetized our bad ideas by making a list of all the bad ideas, putting them on a shirt and making it the Bad Ideas Tour. But yeah, the thing about bad ideas is what you pointed out, Jeremy. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, what would be like a terrible lyric to put here? Most of them are really bad. And every now and again, somebody says something and you're like, that's actually like kind of an interesting tangent. This is actually maybe something sort of interesting worth pursuing. Takes the pressure off. A lot of times in business, it's easier to say no than yes, because if you work for a record label and it's like, yeah, I'm not signing that band, I don't think they're going to be successful. If you sign something and spend the company's money and it flops, you look bad. I think this is true a lot of times where it's easier to not put ourselves out there. And so finding creative devices such as you can come up with the worst idea possible is a way that let's find ways that we can open up and put ourselves out there. Another thing, somewhat related, that I do in the studio is to, when I'm talking to artists, sometimes I'll just open up to them about something, letting them know that we can communicate like this. I'm not just some wall of confidence who doesn't make mistakes. So I always tell people, love your mistakes because you will learn so much more. You'll learn a lot from failing at things.
I don't know if I've gotten to love your mistakes, but I've definitely gotten to learn from your mistakes.
That's what I mean.
One of the things I say a lot to folks, you need to laugh at yourself while you're falling, but at the same time, challenge yourself to do better. And they're not mutually exclusive. You can do both at the same time. We need to not take ourselves so seriously, but we also need to maintain this like edge about wanting to improve. And that goes back to the like always become, there's no like destination. You never like, we've arrived. Yes, you can build an album and release that album. But I always go back to Leonardo da Vinci. Every painting he finished, he never finished. Some of them he came back over years and decades and was doing another brushstroke. There's always something more. You can both be finished and still be working on it at the same time.
Since May of this year, except for one day where I was working on Pro Tools, I have only made records on 1-inch 8-track analog mixed to half-inch analog tape with no computers used for anything in the studio except backing up mixes so that people can actually listen to them. I've been working this way because let's do things we believe in. What if we want to fix a vocal? I'll punch it in. What if we want to use 2 different takes? I'll cut it together with a razor blade, which is just like you're committing. When you put that razor blade in there, you are committing to doing something. The workflow has been amazing. Every artist I've done this with has told me it sounds great. People love the sound of the analog gear. People love the sound of tape. There's no doubt about that. But even people that don't understand the science behind it or why it sounds different, everybody that hears it, if you just play one and play the other without even being able to knowing what it is, will say the second one sounds something I like about it more. But the workflow is so freeing for people when they're done and realize, I can't just go back and like nitpick at this forever. Trust me, there are amazing modern records that could not be made without Pro Tools or Logic or Fruity Loops or whatever your thing is you like to work in. And it's like these amazing modern pop records, Charlie XCX or Sabrina Carpenter, or something like it's like Olivia Rodrigo. His records aren't going to get made on a 1-inch 8-track. But there's some kinds of things that these simple formats really work well for. And the interesting thing has been the reaction of the artists, who many of whom have never done this before and were a little freaked about it when they came in, just that it's like, I'm going to try it because we trust you and you say it's cool. But I can tell it's like, they're not sure they're going to like the flavor of this food when they stick it into their mouth. And then when they're done, they realize what an incredible feeling to commit to something that's pretty unadorned, and you did great. And that's who you are.
Let's talk about students and sort of these next generations.
Yes.
Every generation has had to learn a new skill. But if we go back to something you said at the very beginning about there's only so many ingredients, the world has changed all around us, but the way that we need to interact, it all comes back to the same things. Be obsessed, be passionate, be disciplined, be positive. Is it still the same? And we're just trying to overcomplicate and think that everything's so different, but it's actually still the same.
Yes, I think it's still the same in those core things. But there are certain skills that are different that need to be focused on for today's generation of college students who were born in the early 2000s, post 9/11 people. These are muscles that need to be exercised. The kids that come to UGA today, they're very bright, they're very accomplished, they have broad, diverse tastes. I think they're great, and I think they're very open to direction, which is good. But the primary issues are writing skills and not being so helpless. I'm here because I'm at UGA today. I'm here because I love being here. And everything I do in my life, I do because I love to do it. But by writing skills, I mean constructing a sentence, because you've gotten so used to LOL, LMK, whatever in your phone that they send emails that are like texts. I point out, nobody that you apply to a job to is going to notice your good communication skills. They will all notice your bad communication skills. And it's important to be able to do that, important to understand these things that we were taught to do, such as capitalization, punctuation, spelling, the basic stuff. They're also of a generation where we plan, come over to my house at 3:00. At 3:00, they text from outside the door, okay, I'm here, and it's knock on the door. call somebody, engage with people. Your iPhone isn't a shield. So use it as a window, not a shield. The other thing is that I mentioned about helplessness is I've honed my syllabi over the years to have things. There are no excused absences. You get this many absences before it affects your grade. So know this at the beginning of the semester. This gives you a few days where you're sick, you have a conflict, you stayed up too late, whatever you want. Spend those cards wisely. Just like in life, in work, spend your personal stuff wisely so that you have the proper amount of attention to put into things that you commit to. I had a small class, an upper level production class, and I had known all these kids for a few years. And it's the last night of the semester, and they're all in the lab working on their editing project for this production class. I had come down there just to kind of check in on them, which I didn't have to do, but I appreciate the opportunity for me to be a resource for college students and to both be available to them. And I really honed this in COVID, which people were having so many emotional struggles I'm just going to make myself available to you. I'll always be honest with you. And sometimes being honest with you is being supportive of you. And sometimes being honest with you is telling you that what you're telling me is clearly BS, and any reasonable adult can tell that. And you need to not do that because it makes you look bad. I'm telling you it's because I would like to help you, and I do like you. But so this girl asked me, she said, is it like this every semester where the students are always right up against the last minute finishing the projects? And I thought about it and I said, I know all of you well enough to be straight up with you. And the answer is no. This has gotten much worse in the last few years, especially post-COVID. And they all stopped working and looked at me. And I said, it's not a judgment. It's just an observation that you are all smarter and more evolved than me. And you have great things in your future that will be things I couldn't even imagine. But the fact is that I do find the current generation of college students that there is this, I feel that it's some combination of spending 2 years of your formative adolescence in sweatpants going to school on Zoom and having a smartphone since you were in like 6th grade or something. This girl who was a great student, but also one of the worst worry warts imaginable. She'd come up to you on a test and it's like, well, this word could mean this or it could mean that. Well, you're just going to have to make the best decision that you can. I think part of the problem is that because we all have phones, every time we hit a roadblock in life, we just put it into a search engine. I've been combating this by creating academic exercises that have challenges that you don't have time to look in your phone. Because for one thing, in the classroom with me, no computers or phones are allowed. There can be one designated note taker for the Disability Resource Center because there are kids who need that for various diagnoses. I also frequently have the class roll on a random name generating pinwheel. Jeremy, stand up. I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. How's it going? Good? Okay, great. Now I'm going to ask you another question. Please explain streaming mechanical royalties to me. And so you can't hide. You have to be on your toes. You have to have read. You have to have listened. You have to have paid attention because there is every chance you're going to get called on. Another thing I do is create assignments that where they have a week and then like a day into the assignment, I'll email the class and say, oh, in our theoretical touring project, unfortunately, there has just been a tornado. And so all the Midwest states are wiped out. You're going to have to reroute your whole thing. And I've built the time in to accommodate this, but I think the ability to think on your feet is really important to success because you are going to face challenges in your life. And I don't want to go off on this too much because I know we're going to run out of time, but I think about being at a music festival about 10 years ago. Bass player broke a string and the band was from here. Guy was about 20. And it was one of these things where they play a couple of songs and there's an interview with the lead singer and he's freaked out. And so I walked around to the side of the stage and said, hey, I can change your string for you because I don't have any spares. I left them at the campsite. It was at Bonnaroo. And I was like, play in a different key, play it on a different part of the neck. I don't know how. My brother just tells me what one to start on. I don't even know the name of the notes. And I was like, okay, give me your bass. I got a leather man from the monitor engineer, cut the end of the string off, tied 2 knots on either end, just kind of put it upside down into the bass, tuned it up as close as I could get it with just like pressing against my ear, handed it to this kid. And handed it to him and just patted him on the shoulder and said, "How many more songs?" He said, "2." I was like, "It'll work her at 1. Go get them." And he went up there
Yeah.
and it sort of worked. I ran into this guy recently and he's in his 30s now. And he said, that was the most mind blowing thing. He said, I suddenly had so much more confidence. It's like, right, just figure it out when it happens, because sometimes you just have to.
I love that. Dave, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so glad we met. I'm so glad you expanded my reach today of just your world and how
Thank
you
you.
operate. You have a very similar philosophy about paying it forward, and you do it, sounds like, in every facet of your life. As many who have listened to this know, I like to end each of my interviews with one of my favorite questions, which is describe yourself in 6 words.
My 6-word biography is: music inspires serial embracing of opportunity.
I love that.
If it wasn't for music, I wouldn't be inspired to do anything. I'm inspired to do seemingly everything.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, speaking of music, I did want to shout out that you have a live solo EP coming out next week called Any Better and It Would Be Worse. It's under the label Orange Twin, and you're about to do a 2-week tour to promote it. Thank you for joining me today, David. Go check him out.